Welcome back to It's Your Story to Tell. If you didn't listen to part 1 of this episode with Dr. Uejin Kim, please go back. It's really important to understand the stories. In part 2 of our episodes, we go into helping you understand a process or a way to maybe move forward in your own story. But these stories and the knowledge and wisdom that comes from walking out this experience is so important, because I think it inspires and gives hope. Megan did that. Uejin did that. So
Mm,
what's possible when I invite God in to my story? The parts that I don't want to share, the parts that are cringy, the parts that I'm embarrassed by. But that's the enemy wants to keep you stuck. He wants to keep you in hiding. And so we're here to help break that cycle, to say, look, it's okay. We are imperfect, and we have a loving God who has grace and mercy for wherever we've been in our story. And he has a plan and a purpose. And so we can make a choice to align with that. We're back now talking with Dr. Uejin Kim about the process of moving from the awareness that I had hurt, I had things that were unfair in my life. Now, what do I want to do with that, and how do I want to move forward? So, thank you so much for being back here with us and helping us to bridge psychology and spirituality and really bring them together to a very integrated path to wholeness.
yeah, thank you so much. I am really loving the conversation, especially for me too.
We talked about inner child and how your inner child might have been wounded and how it's showing up in your adult life. And now we're going to move into, how do you step out of alignment with that old self? We talked about in episode 1 where we had this moment, and it came in our own parenting where we said, I do not want to do this anymore.
Mm, mm-hmm.
I don't want my kids to have to be the cycle breaker. I'm going to do what it takes. What was the next step in your journey? For me, it was crying out to God, because I knew I needed some direction. I had, not to say counseling is bad, but I had spent years and years in counseling and I was not moving forward. And so in this desperate place, God answered me and gave me some direction. What was it for you? How did you move out of that?
What if your breakthrough wasn't found in striving, but in walking? What if clarity, healing, and direction came not in the hustle, but in quiet, intentional steps led by the Spirit? Sacred Pathways is a monthly walking mentorship designed to align your body, soul, and spirit with the wisdom of God. Each month, you'll receive 12 walking lessons. These are short teachings designed to be experienced on the move. You'll also get one live group session and access to a community of women committed to walking in purpose. This is more than a routine, it's a rhythm of renewal, a sacred invitation to process life with God, one step at a time. If you're hungry for deeper intimacy with the Lord, clarity in your calling, and healing that moves through your whole being, this is your path. Join Sacred Pathways and start walking in wisdom today. Now enrolling on itsyourstorytotell.com.
I think there's few processes, and I think the first step that I'm kind of thinking of is creating space for really accepting what happened
Mm.
and really grieving that it happened. I think that's a very uncomfortable space. A lot of times when people come to me for therapy or medication management and we talk about, childhood wounds, a lot of times people are like, okay, so what's next? What's next? And give me the 12 steps of healing. But a lot of times when we have that sense of agenda, then there's no true acceptance and true grieving. And David and Psalms always talks about, I'm going down to the Sheol, right? Like all the way down to the valley death, not knowing when you will hit the rock bottom. And I think that willingness to go to all the way to the down and grieve all the way to the down. For me, that's kind of my style. Like, I'm just like, I'm never going to go down again. So if I'm going to go down, I want to go all the way down, So I think that really kind of works where without agenda, without a sense of time, without okay, healing should be done in 6 months now and it's not working, like without that, giving yourself to truly grieve. And isn't that kind of similar to what we do for our kids? When we let them play, we want them to play fully. When they imagine, we want them to imagine fully, right? Without like, okay, you can only play for 5 minutes and we have to go. Like unstructured play, I think that's kind of how I imagine like the first step is unstructured grief, unstructured space where you can just cry to just cry. And there's many moments where I would just like cry on my way to drop off kids and on my way to pick up kids, and just be sad. And when I had like the old Eugene, the hyper responsible Eugene is like, okay, grieving is getting in the way of productivity, so grieving is bad. But then God's like, no, you can just be sad. Just like Elijah when he was suicidal after running away from Jezebel. And he's like, I'm no worthy than my, ancestors. Let me just die. What did God do? God didn't say, that's not productive. Like you need to be doing the next steps. He just gave them food and let him sleep, and God was like, it's okay to just cry. You were never meant to perform and produce. That was not my purpose for you, so that is kind of number one. And people hate that because there's indefinite thing. But once you fully cry, you start to cry less, and cry less. And it will get better once you actually fully feel all the feelings. And then kind of what you're talking about is capturing your thoughts captive, giving you another perspective. And do you want to do this? So the nuts and bolts of therapy really happens after that.
When I'm hearing you share this way of grieving, I'm thinking of a skill from dialectical behavior therapy of opposite action. So when you're parentified and when you are always having to perform and you have this specific outcome and timelines, and I was so good at breaking down a goal and hitting it, right? So it's like healing, goal, read this book, do this, like I'm going to heal. But that is actually engaging in the same harmful behavior that you're actually now doing what others did to you. You're doing it to yourself.
Yeah, because that's how you survived.
Right. It's the only thing you know. It's the tools you have in your toolbox. And I'm a huge proponent of dialectical behavior skills because it really helped me to move through, right? So my issue, I couldn't sit with the uncomfortable. So sitting with, it felt like, oh, you're just blaming your parents. Oh, this, oh, that. Like, pull up your big girl panties and you need to keep going. Stop making it about everybody else. But that very thing was the thing keeping me stuck. And so when I started to take an opposite action and sit with my thoughts, I was able to start seeing patterns that I didn't even realize that were there. Then God told me to measure those thoughts. And I was like, okay, measure them against what? And the cool thing is, if you ask God, He will have an answer for you. I promise you, He wants to help you. He knows the path out. And He said, I want you to measure them against the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control, which I think is such an interesting one because all the other ones feel like feelings. We think of love as a feeling, but actually they're all choices. Am I going to choose love? Am I going to choose grace? Am I going to choose faithfulness? Am I going to choose to be self-controlled? And I didn't ever see choice in my life. And so choice gave me power to see, here's my thought. I have two choices. Do I want to stick with this overwhelm or do I want to choose peace? Now, how do I do that? And so God just kept taking me on the journey as I was ready. And what that reminds me of in the DBT world is check the facts. Take your thoughts captive, start assessing. Is that true? How do I feel about that? Do I want to believe that? Because I didn't even know what I was believing that was dictating my behavior. I just was doing what I was programmed to do.
Right.
And I was going through this transformation, and the scripture he brought me to is that you are transformed by the renewing of your mind. So I can't keep here doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I'm stuck here because I don't know what to do, but then I need wisdom. And so God took me back into scripture, helping me to understand all the way from the beginning how I saw God. Because I saw God in the Garden of Eden where there were consequences to your choices. And if you didn't do what you were told, you didn't get what you were supposed to get.
Yeah.
And so I lived in that space, and I kind of had this view of God as very authoritarian, not a lot of love. And in a lot of ways, that's how I saw my parents. You talked about how God was reparenting you. So let's talk about like reparenting, because that's kind of the process that he took me on, as he wanted me to see him differently. He wanted to see my identity differently. He wanted me to see the stories in the Bible differently so that I could make a change, because we can't change something that we have no awareness of.
Yeah, there's so many biblical truth that really is the source of all wisdom, but interestingly, so I'm a psychiatrist, and a lot of times I share grace with my patients. I share grace with my kids. I share my grace with my husband and my friends. But the verse, like, love others as yourself, the specifier is as yourself, and is how can you love others if you don't know what loving others feel like? And interestingly, for hyper responsible people, is be responsible for others like you're responsible for yourself, kind of, but that's not love. Love is acceptance. And this is like a new thing that I was kind of doing is love. When people say like, oh, love yourself, but it kind of has a message of tolerance, of tolerate anything that you are and just, let them be. It's like more freedom, tolerance, unconditional acceptance, and, ultimate respect. Kind of that definition is what love is, right? But I think love is attention. You're attending to them. You're thinking about them. And so there are little moments so first I said was grief. And the second stage now that we're kind of talking about is wonder. Wonder what your life would be like if you share some of the attention that you share to other people for you. And there's one time that my kids grow so fast. I don't know, my grocery bills is like doubling as we speak, so there is one time that I was helping my 7-year-old get ready for school, and I was looking at his pants, and his belly is like really tight. So then I'm thinking, oh, I need to order the next size. Like, he didn't say anything, but I attended to him. I paid attention. And I said, he needs the next size. So I'm going to go on Amazon. I'm going to get the next size. And God spoke to me. Do you know that I'm attending to you like that too?
Wow.
You don't need to tell me anything. I know what you need next. So I'm preparing it. And just sitting there and just accepting, wow, you're attending to me like I'm attending to my little kids. There are many moments when I speak to my patients, just giving them pattern recognition. Like, this is parentified childhood wounds, that's kind of showing up. And now you have symptoms of depression. But now do you understand that your drug use, your cocaine use was not because you wanted to do cocaine, but it was because the pain was so painful that now you did that. So I'm just giving them pattern recognition. Yeah. And they are like, wow, I didn't even think of it like that. And then that's when God speaks to me like, now can you give that understanding and acceptance and grace for you, for how you treated your husband, how you treated your kids, maybe how you treated that friend? Can you give that understanding to you that, oh, this is what I knew? Like, and I didn't intend to hurt them, but I did. But now I see that it was a learned behavior and I want to change that. So a lot of times when it comes to switching it up, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, now I was living this fast-paced life and I have to change to another fast-paced life. Actually, it's not. Once you actually accept this was not my intention, and I gave a lot of effort, but this was not my intention of this outcome, then the problem seems not this big. It actually seems like a tweak. Oh, I need to tweak this. I need to tweak that. Then it seems a little bit more doable. And I have a course, Be Still to Move Forward. And I have a RPC method, which is Reflect, Protect, Connect. And it guides you to create this space of acceptance and connection. A lot of times it's hard for us to connect, but it gives you prompts to go back to the childhood of, when did you last feel this? Where you're frustrated and overwhelmed and you felt guilty. kind of like unfairly guilty, then you go back to the memory and be like, oh, let's attend to that little girl or little boy in that memory so that your foundation is a little bit more secure because now you're passing on that understanding to your childhood memory.
I'm thinking of the emotion model. Like for me,
Mm-hmm.
was so powerful to begin understanding that my emotions have a pattern to them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a trigger and my body feels a certain way, and then it results in these responses. Because if we don't recognize the pattern, we can't interrupt it. We can't break the cycle. We're talking about
Mm-hmm.
breaking generational cycles. Well, you got to start with yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree. God showed me. I thought, oh, I'm so loving. I'm that helper, fixer. I'm a nurse. Like, couldn't,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always there for other people. And what God showed me is, no, you're using them to meet your needs to make you feel better. I'm doing it out of a place of depletion, not overflow. And so I had to learn to have that love and grace for myself. And then he said, give what you've been freely given. And so learning that he had already given me that, he had already provided for me for my sins, and gaining that understanding and accepting that as truth allowed something to flow out of me that I didn't have before. I was gaining this awareness and taking that awareness and saying, okay, I didn't show up in alignment with who I am. Like I said this to my kids or I did this and it didn't feel in alignment. So I want to show up differently. And the cope ahead process for me was so amazing because it allowed me to sit and use my process driven brain and
Mm-hmm.
parts of me that I developed that are really good. Like I
Mm-hmm.
love that I can operationalize things and all of those things that I learned out of some of these hard things. But I sat with this process and I would be able to look at and say, okay, I recognize this in my body. And then I said something. So as soon as I recognize that coming up in my body, what am I going to do? I'm going to choose to take a deep breath. I'm going to look around and say, okay, I am not in danger right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to respond in this moment. And so creating that space for yourself to actually be able to choose something different, because when you just jump into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, however your nervous system is responding to that trigger, you aren't in your conscious mind that says, I have choice here. You are in survival. And so you're just doing what's been programmed. And we've already determined, like, I don't want that programming anymore. So that was really helpful for me to develop these skills and to learn how to have compassion for myself instead of shame, because I think shame then also just adds to that triggered response and keeps us stuck.
Right. Because shame, fear, insecurity, they're all feeling not safe. When you're not safe, then you start to become more sympathetic nervous system. I guess, this is a good space to kind of say it because I heard this where everybody's now opening up to patterns of like sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So when you're in a fight or flight mode, then take a deep breath, which, 10 steps to get out of sympathetic nervous system. That seems very doable. But I think when you're still entering into that space to control, then you'll never get on top of connection. So there's, and this is not for you, Megan. I know that you know DBT, but for the audience who's kind of scrolling on Instagram and seeing like
Mm-hmm.
2 steps to get out of, being triggered moment. And, the social media prompts makes it so simple. But the two idea is, are you going to try to control it or are you going to try to connect with it? And I would opt for
Mm-hmm.
connection if you have that
Yes.
space for you. Because I heard this when there was like a marriage therapy kind of case and the wife said, my body is tight and I don't want to have sex with you, to the husband, because my body is telling me something that I don't know. And I was like, that's an interesting understanding of somatic symptoms. Like
Mm-hmm.
your somatic symptoms is supposed to tell you so that you can connect with how you feel.
Yes.
Your body doesn't control if you should have sex or not.
Mm-hmm.
But you can tell him, I don't feel safe, so I don't want to have sex, versus my body is feeling this way, so it's telling me to not have sex. So those are a little
Yes.
bit of nuances that I want the audience to know, is that
Hmm.
your somatic symptom is a symptom, it's a sign for you to
Right.
connect with, not to control or to obey,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. In my coaching, the kind of three pillars I have are curiosity, because
Mhm.
it's all about getting curious, compassion, because you have to be able to sit with yourself, love yourself, meet your own needs, and let God meet your needs. And then community, because it's so hard to do this. And there's going to be days that you just need someone to come alongside of you and see you. And that's what the space of this podcast, even though we're apart, it's to bring connection, to bring community, to say what you're going through is understandable. And if you keep hiding it, you will never be able to move through it. And so I'm just really enjoying how we're helping people to see that they have to create that safe space within them in order to be able to have the capacity to continue the curiosity. So everything has to that's that holistic approach, right? And there's not one way, some people, one thing works and maybe it's DBT. For some, it's maybe talk therapy. And that's the beauty, is that there are a lot of opportunities to engage. As we're closing, we talked about how psychology and DBT skills and all of those things, they provide us with some understanding processes, but how spirituality brings a complete approach. Can you talk a little bit about why you have found that to be such an important aspect of the work that you do with people as they're trying to heal and break generational cycles so that they can release generational blessing?
I had this analogy, and this is the first time that I'm sharing it. I'm going to use it somewhere else. But being a Christian and not understanding what grace tastes like is like having an ice cream shop with ice cream that you don't know what it tastes like. And our parents were ice cream shop owners, and they didn't taste the ice cream that they were selling. And, as a little kid, I'm like, oh, can I taste this? And no, 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 we never tasted it. You just keep on selling it, but you can't eat it. And then you have this sense of like, okay, but what kind of marketing agent are you going to be if you don't know what you're selling? And you're like, I don't know. People seem to like it and I don't know what it tastes like, but here you go. Right. And that's what parentified childhood felt like, is that you don't know what grace tastes like. And you were passing it away and saying, oh, people like it. I don't know why they like it, but here you go. And you keep on passing out ice creams and selling it. But being God's child is like having a parent with an ice cream shop who lets you taste any ice cream flavors you want, because he knows that there's plenty to go around. And when you taste that ice cream, then not only are you going to be knowing that it's good, but that it should be shared with everybody. But the way that you're going to describe grace is like lived, evidence of like, but like this flavor, I like this flavor, and this one has a little bit of minty thing and it comes at the end. You're able to describe grace like you know what it's about. And I want that for everybody who's listening here, is to really receive grace and taste it fully and taste all the flavors that God has, so that they can really own it and share it with other people. Because a lot of times church has been an ice cream shop that nobody's happy. Nobody is enjoying ice cream and they're just selling it like they don't even know what they're talking about. But I think God is doing something different, is taste the ice cream first so that you can share it with other people. And there's plenty to go around. So you don't have to think, well, if I'm grieving grace for them, then I can't have it. There's no finite amount of grace. It's unlimited. And I think
Mm.
that's something that I had to learn. I mean, we can have another episode of this, but my parents always compared us with good intention,
Mhm.
but it always felt like praise had a finite amount, So it's like, oh, if they got it, then I don't get it. But God was like, no, you can get praise and you can get praise. And I'm like, how is that even possible?
Right.
But but God's world is so
It is
different.
so cool when God allows you to see these areas where the parenting you had built certain beliefs and patterns in how you interact with the world, and then He wants to shine truth
Mm.
on that so that you can reclaim all that the enemy tried to steal from you, from your family, and you get to be a generation that says, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do something different. So
Yeah.
you've said whatever you're going through, healing and reconciliation are possible. What gives you that conviction? And what final encouragement would you give to listeners who are ready to start healing?
As long as you're made in image of God, which we all are, then we have a home that we can go back to. And that's my conviction, that everybody's worth and respect, no matter what your belief is that it's worthy of healing and being felt and being a child. And I think that's the truth that I stand on. And when person comes into my psychiatry clinic, no matter what their belief is, not saying that I'm better than you or whatever, they're worthy of my attention and my love and my care because they're made in the image of God. And anyone who's listening, who's made in the image of God, can really wonder what it would look like for me to really receive that grace for me first, and taste it. And I just want that wonder and curiosity, for the audience today.
So good. Thank you so much for being here and bringing not just your personal heart and your story, but your professional insight is so powerful. To connect with Dr. Kim and learn more about her work in mental and spiritual health, access her guides about meeting your inner child, you can visit the show notes. And if you are looking for some free resources, the mission of It's Your Story to Tell is to freely give what has been given. And I just wrote a chapter, and I'll link to it, called the When the Promise Meets Resistance. And it goes along with a lot of what we were talking about and how to support yourself through that. And I also connect it to the instruction that is given in scripture through James. And I also have a free Bible study if you're interested in going through that. I'll link those in the show notes. If this episode spoke to you, will you share it? Our goal is to connect and help more people in this hard place of understanding what's driving their experience in this world. And we believe that you were created with purpose, and we want to help you as you are walking this out and walking with God to fill that place in the earth that would be lacking if you don't step into all that God has for you. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We release new episodes every Friday, and we are so thankful to have you as listeners. Thank you so much, Dr. Kim, for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Listeners, remember, your story matters, your healing matters, and your journey can become someone else's hope.